Okay, hi everybody. I want to take a second to welcome folks back from lunch. I think we're gonna get started in like 30 seconds to 1 minute, so please feel free to get settled.
You want to listen? I'm not supposed to do something.
No.
I have been with CHI for around 8 years, and for the past couple of years have led our work on our behavioral health initiative, and have had a longstanding interest in this specific topic. The state sharing their relationship with social media. That's going to be about 5 minutes long. Then someone and I will come back, share a little bit about what the evidence currently says around social media and youth mental health in Colorado and the US today. And then we are going to spend the last half hour hearing from a really fabulous youth panel moderated by Allie Daly, the policy director at Partners for Children's Mental Health, who will share what they're kind of thinking about in terms of reactions to everything that we've heard and the state of social media. We will not be taking questions at the end. So if we end up getting out a little early, you'll get your first choice of the snacks at the break. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and start this video.
I think it's just these platforms and apps that people go on and share their experiences. Like a platform that you can like post your videos or like your excitements.
A way to communicate with others, and like whether it's like in the house next door or on the other side of the world.
To me, social media is like a platform for people to share things about their lives that they wouldn't be comfortable sharing with face to face. Sometimes that can be good, but a lot of times it can be detrimental, especially to kids our age.
As much as I wish it was just a tool for communication and catching up with friends, it's so much more that it probably shouldn't be.
I use Snapchat, Instagram, Pinterest,
YouTube, and messages.
Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube.
Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok.
Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat.
TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram.
Snapchat, Instagram. I had TikTok, but I deleted it.
I don't use social media, but I guess like Pinterest counts.
I love Pinterest. It's so great.
I use Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest.
I don't have Twitter. I don't have Facebook. Those are not really our generation.
It's definitely to just stay connected to a world that feels very disconnected. People often use social media as a platform to raise awareness to like things that are happening in like the world or like in their community. It's also a place where people can like uplift their like the creative aspects of themselves.
Some of the best things about social media is like being able to track like what your friends are doing and like seeing what is going on around the world.
It allows us to just stay connected with friends, make plans with friends, see what our friends are up to.
It's also connection between employers on LinkedIn. It's also connection between just friends that you might not have seen for a long time. It's connection between my grandma who just got Instagram.
It brings you closer because you can see like what they post, and so you can like find like something common, like, oh, you do that, I do that too, and then like bond off it.
Like being able to share like a funny video that I've seen to my friends and then laughing at it like in the chat, but then also going to school the next day and rewatching it and be like, ha ha ha, that was so funny.
Personally, I really like watching cooking videos. I think that's the best thing.
Like bullying, kind of, and like negative comments that people put on your videos.
I would say FOMO, and for those of you who might not know, it's fear of missing out. Just because I use social media to connect and to stay a part of these, I guess, mini communities.
But social media drives a lot of comparison in our day-to-day lives, and just very subtly and naturally, and it really does steal your joy.
Seeing girls my age like doing things and like acting certain ways, and I'm like, oh shoot, am I like supposed to be acting like that?
It's hard to see these supermodels on Instagram like always looking great, and then it's just like, oh well, I'm in bed at 9 p.m. looking like this.
A lot of these apps, these social media apps are designed by these companies to have you on them for as long as possible. And it kind of gets to the point where you don't even know what you're looking at anymore, but you still just keep swiping.
I like have to put my phone away like 30 minutes before I go to bed sometimes, because other than that, like I will just keep scrolling and scrolling because it's just like, I want to know more.
If you aren't careful with what you're watching or like seeing, you can get really insecure and stuff, and it can cause like a lot of negative feelings.
I feel like I have to have a good looking Instagram, because now like thinking about me, especially going into college next year, how am I going to find a roommate? I'm going to give her my Instagram. What if she doesn't think my Instagram's cool? What, she's going to make a whole assumption about me based off of my Instagram.
I honestly think I'd be very grateful if I didn't have social media anymore, but the only downside about it is I would miss the memories that I have on social media, because I do post a lot.
I just think where to go, because it is so important. We live in an age now where like social media plays a very critical part of our lives, whether you want it to or not.
If this situation where I'm losing all of my social media was happening to everybody else my age, everybody I viewed as relevant, I'd be completely fine. I wouldn't even care if it was just me and nobody else. I'd probably think like, wow, I'm under a rock now.
Maybe like bummer.
Relieved. I'd be relieved. I think it's a lot of weight I don't want, but I have because of the generation I'm in.
All right, so we heard from a lot of different kind of perspectives on social media in that video. So if there are really only 3 things we want you to take away from the end of today's session, because there's going to be a lot of information throughout, we want to kind of start with what those 3 things are. The first is that, as we heard, young people themselves are concerned about social media. For me, the most, I think, surprising part of that entire video was at the end when the young folks were asked, what would it be like if social media went away? There was this palpable sense of relief that a lot of people expressed. The second is that it is not just people's personal stories. There's also emerging evidence and studies that show there are potential dangers to social media, especially when it comes to youth mental health. And third is that youth really need to drive a lot of these decisions. There are a lot of opportunities we have to put policies in place like age restrictions. Guess what's really easy to circumvent on a website? An age restriction. And so, the decisions that get made here, we can make policy decisions, but at the end of the day, the person actually holding the phone is probably going to be driving a lot of these decisions, which is why we are beginning and ending with Youth Voice today. But first, let's do a level set of what we even mean by social media. People define this term broadly, as you heard in the video. And so there are some obvious answers, kind of the usual suspects like Facebook or Snapchat. But then there are potentially less obvious ones like video games that have some sort of social interactive component. People consider those to be social media as well. But no matter how you define it, there are a ton of platforms out there. And so just for fun, let's give ourselves a quick quiz. I won't make anybody name all of these because we only have so much time. But for a additional raffle ticket for today, can anyone volunteer to name these 6 social media platforms? Please raise your hand. Folks who are online, I'm sorry, you can just put it in the chat if you want to impress your fellow attendees.
Green sweater back there had a hand up.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's the first hand I saw.
Pinterest, next Twitter, and TikTok.
You're missing the one in orange.
I said it's real.
Oh, the little one in orange. Well, how about we give you a ticket anyway? Anybody want to guess that 6th one? SoundCloud, exactly. 2 tickets today. It takes a village. I didn't know all of these either. All right, so great. So social media is broad. We know that. So what do? We panic, of course. Social media is everywhere and it's destroying our society, and the corporations are bit by bit prevailing. Maybe this is premature. That is the question we are going to be exploring today. Is it time to panic? And so let's think about what people are saying. We noted earlier that the concern here is not just coming from those of us who didn't grow up using social media. Again, you heard a lot in the video about people expressing concern around it and its impacts. And so first, let's acknowledge that people themselves often say there are good aspects to social media. This is a mix of headlines and quotes we heard from young folks in preparation of today's presentation. You can see people saying it exposes them to other cultures, even if they can't travel. It exposes them to new ideas. It helps you stay connected to the people that you care about. In other work that we're doing, people have told us that they use social media to connect with people with a shared identity when they have a hard time forming that community in their daily lived lives. My dad was in the Navy, so I grew up moving around every 12 to 18 months. And I do sometimes wonder if I had grown up in an age of Facebook or something similar, might I have retained some of those childhood friendships and feel a little bit more rooted than I do. So I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush here when we talk about the potential dangers of social media. But let's not hide the downsides either. We have research, and again, we have young people themselves saying that social media causes anxiety. It makes them more distracted. They note the intentionality on the part of social media companies. Some people even told us they forget to eat when they're engaged with their phone using a social media app. And so as you can see, there is good and there's bad. I will say it was a lot easier to find the content for this slide than it was to find the content for the slide before it. And the data back this up. Here we are looking at rates of poor mental health among Coloradans ages 10 to 18, which we define as having 8 or more days of poor mental health in the past month. And this is a 4-fold increase in recent years of people 10 to 18 saying that they are experiencing poor mental health. That 2023 CHAS number, which we are sharing for the first time today, shows that more than 1 in 5 people in this age group are reporting poor mental health. And we're looking at this broad age group of 10 to 18 because even though most social media platforms restrict use to 13 or older, 40% of kids 8 to 12 have social media and are using it. And a lot of stuff has happened over these past 8 years, like there was a pandemic, schools closed down, worsening effects of climate change. But it feels like we can't dismiss how closely this tracks to patterns of social media use, especially when there is emerging evidence that links why these two might be connected. So again, today we invite you to panic a little bit, because I'll admit there's a lot we don't know. Data are lacking, and social media companies are famously non-transparent when it comes to sharing their data or sharing studies about the effects of their products on young people and people in general. The pace of research is not keeping up with the pace of social media growth and use, but there is evidence beginning to emerge, and it is potentially a very urgent issue. Oh. Thanks, Emily. So as Emily noted, we do know that there is emerging evidence that points to some of the potential dangers of social media, specifically how it pertains to youth mental health. Now, I want to acknowledge that social media itself is a very broad topic. Earlier today, we heard quite a bit about privacy and legal regulation, or at least enough that I sort of want to throw my Apple Watch away, but I can't. But today, we're really going to focus on issues that were identified by our youth leaders who are joining us today, who came up with some of the top 5 most pressing issues for young people as it pertains to their mental health. So the first is sleep. We know that sleep matters for more than just acing second period chem class. But what is the connection between sleep and mental health and social media? Second is social comparison. Many people refer to social media as a highlight reel that really only shows us the glitz and glamour of peers' lives. How does that impact how youth feel about their own mental health and well-being? Third is attention, or the lack of, that social media contributes to. Fourth is cyberbullying. This is a concerning issue and one that happens in a space that many adults, including parents and teachers, have no access to themselves. And finally, algorithms. How does data inform the type of social media content young people are exposed to online and on apps? And how does that in turn affect their worldview? So I want to acknowledge that as we were putting this presentation together, quite a few of these struck a chord for me as well. Does anyone feel similar? Are any of these resonating with you? Okay, I'm seeing quite a few nods, so we definitely are not alone here. But what I do want to recognize is the critical importance that is the adolescent period. During adolescence, neurons and synapses are firing and wiring, and young people are making connections, not just with their peers and with adults, but with their community at large. Social media adds a whole new layer of complexity to this period, and that's really why we're focusing in on this topic today. So let's get into the evidence, starting with sleep. Data shows that more screen use is in fact associated with less and poorer quality sleep. There are a few different reasons for this. 1 in 3 teenagers report that they stay up past midnight on social media. If I'm doing the math correctly, a 1 a.m. bedtime coupled with like a 6:30 a.m. wake up time during the school week is not enough sleep for anyone, but much less a teenager. And there are a couple things at play here. We heard on the video just how easy it was for people to scroll and swipe while laying in bed. But actually, data says that the more concerning issue are apps where you're constantly messaging or engaging with peers or the online community. It's really hard to put your phone away on the nightstand, knowing that you might be missing out on a really crucial or important conversation. And finally, blue light. We've known about the challenges of blue light for a while and how it impacts our internal circadian rhythms and our body clocks. And there are a few ways to kind of mitigate these harms, right? We have blue light glasses, and there are certain features that turn screens yellow the moment the sun goes down, but these aren't entirely foolproof. I know that I don't really enjoy watching Netflix with a yellow hue when I'm trying to wind down before bed. And this is all important because less sleep is associated with poor mental health. And with young people in particular, we see increased rates of depressive symptoms, including suicidal ideation and thought associated with poor quality sleep. Again, this is about more than just chemistry class. So now I want to talk about social comparison, and I'll admit that this sort of hits home for me right now. I am currently in the process of wedding planning, and as a result, I get very niche targeted social media content. In fact, if I had $1 for every image of a destination wedding in Tuscany that Instagram showed me, I still would not be able to have a destination wedding in Tuscany, to be clear, but it's not great. And while this isn't great for my budget right now, if I think back to my high school self and there's some sort of equivalent situation, it might really hit a chord. So Sure enough, we see that nearly a quarter of teens say that these platforms make them feel worse about their lives. About a third of teens say that social media platforms make them worry that their friends are hanging out without them, a phenomenon known as fear of missing out or FOMO. And finally, over a third of teenagers report that they feel overwhelmed by all the drama on social media. And we know that if you aren't quite part of the conversation or you feel like you're on the outside, that doesn't feel great either. We also see some gender differences when it comes to social comparison, with teenage girls reporting increased rates of social comparison across the board. And unfortunately, this is associated with things like body dysmorphia and disordered eating behavior. All right. Turning our attention now to attention. I would like to start with a quick poll. Who here has looked at their phone since this presentation began? Simon, you're doing the presentation. Okay, yeah. So I was also going to ask who here has wanted to, but actually I think the majority of hands were just raised. And the folks who are online, I'm just going to acknowledge that I myself have sometimes dared to switch tabs while I'm watching a virtual presentation. So I'm going to assume that a few of you have as well. Phones, as we know, are pervasive, and it's really hard to talk about social media without also talking about the technology that we are constantly using to access it. Does anyone want to guess for another raffle ticket? Thank you, Robin. The year that we hit a milestone in America where now more than half of us own smartphones. I heard 2020. No. Here, let me give a hint. 2007 is the year the iPhone was introduced. Sorry? There's enough guesses here that I'm going to actually ask them to get it right before the raffle ticket instead of playing it as fast and loose as I did last time. Sir? Yeah? Close up, go up. 2012. Okay, yes, 2012. So 5 years after the iPhone was introduced, more than half of us had one in our pocket. Today, the vast majority of us do. So we know that that smartphones are pervasive and that they also, interestingly, reduce our cognitive capacity and our ability to focus on a task just by their mere existence. So your phone can be turned off, it can be turned over, it can be slid across the table, and studies still show that we have a harder time focusing on a task when that is the case. Of course, most of the time, our phones aren't even turned off, right? We have them for a reason. The average number of hours per day that teens are spending looking at their screens has increased 30% in just the past 6 years. And teens get an average of 237 notifications per day on their phones. This is an average. For heavier users, it's even more. A fifth of teens report getting more than 500 notifications on their phones every single day. And these could become so pervasive that there's even a phenomenon called phantom vibrations, where you think you hear or feel a notification, but you actually don't. And this distraction and this constant turning of our attention invokes anxiety and stress responses. And again, as someone said earlier, I want to reiterate that we know this is not just something that's true of young people. When we were rehearsing this presentation, in preparation for today, a lot of our colleagues here were nodding when we started talking about phantom vibrations and the anxiety responses. But the sheer number of notifications that we're talking about here and the amount of screen time and the especially risky effects to mental health during this period of adolescence makes this problem especially concerning when we're talking about young folks. Fourth, bullying and harassment is nothing new among teens and adolescents, but these platforms, these social media platforms, do allow for this strange combination of being both anonymous, but also having what you say be very public, that make these concerning behaviors even more harmful. 46% of teens say that they have experienced bullying or online harassment. And this includes physical threats, spreading false rumors, receiving explicit images without your consent, or having images of you shared without your consent. And compared with younger teen girls or with teen boys, girls 15 to 16 are more likely to experience more types of cyberbullying, specifically when it comes to having false rumors spread about them or comments about their appearance. And people who have experienced this type of online harassment are more likely to also experience a host of poor mental health outcomes, including depression, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and post-traumatic stress disorders. And finally, algorithms. Algorithms are those things that decide what to show us on our social media feeds. So some of you may remember in the early days of social media, it was just kind of this neutral list when you went onto social media of what everybody had posted from the most recent to the least recent things. But now algorithms are used to bump certain types of content over other types of content so that you're more likely to see it. And that certain type of content tends to be extremes. That's what algorithms drive us to. And a lot of those extremes are really, really toxic. 64% of adolescents say they are often or sometimes exposed to hate-based content on social media, whether that is sexist, homophobic, racist, or religion-based hate content. But unfortunately, those are types of exposures that I think hit a lot of us at all ages. Something more unique to young people is the degree to which they are targeted by sites or content that normalize or even promote disordered eating, cutting, self-harm, suicide, or other dangerous and concerning behaviors. And I want to say that these aren't incidental to the reality of social media or the internet. These are things people are driven to by algorithms that were really intentionally put in place by social media companies because they work. These business models are built on user engagement, and we are so engaged when our beliefs are being reinforced, when we are experiencing things that evoke moral outrage related to those beliefs, and when they feel validated. And that's really the last point that I want to drive home about algorithms today and social media. It's not just the presence of these potentially harmful things on the internet, it's the way in which, central to the business models of social media companies, we are guided to them.
And that takes us to our final takeaway today, which is that youth must drive many of the decisions around social media regulation, guidance, and possible solutions. Now, there is some guidance out there already. In fact, organizations like the American Psychological Association and the US Surgeon General have put out some really solid advisories. Is anyone aware of these documents or read them yourselves? Okay, I saw like 2 hands in this room. And here's the thing, I am and always have been a self-professed nerd, and even I wasn't reading US Surgeon General advisories in high school. Social media is so nuanced, so complex, so personal, and the way that young people use it changes so rapidly that in order for any sort of guidance to actually work and make a difference, it has to come from young people themselves. So let's recap. 1, we heard that young people are worried about social media. And there is evidence that points to some of these potential dangers. In order to really help resolve and move forward with some possible solutions and recommendations, youth voice must drive these conversations. So with that, I am excited to hand off the mic to some of our local youth leaders who are joining us here today from the Metro Denver area, as well as their fearless leader, Allie Daly. Let me move my phone out of the way here so I can properly introduce them. Allie Daly serves as the policy director at Partners for Children's Mental Health and the senior behavioral health policy coordinator on the government affairs team at Children's Hospital Colorado. Prior to her time at Children's Colorado, Daly litigated mental health and substance use disorder commitments as an assistant city attorney with the city and county of Denver. Daly has a BA from Boston University and a JD from the University of Colorado Boulder. As I said, we also have a number of youth leaders here today representing a few different organizations. The Youth Council on Mental Health is convened by Partners for Children's Mental Health and is a youth-led, adult-supported effort to positively shape the future of youth mental health in Colorado. The Colorado Youth Congress is a youth-led initiative committed to elevating the voices of youth through empowerment and civic engagement. And finally, Young Aspiring Americans for Social and Political Activism aims to build the self-efficacy of youth who desire to make change in their communities, pursue social science degrees, and social justice careers. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be joined by this outstanding group of youth, and I'm going to do some quick intros so that you know a little bit more about all of them. I'll start with Caitlin. Caitlin is a passionate mental health advocate, currently completing her undergraduate education at the University of Colorado Boulder. She enjoys spending time at the state capitol, assisting as a legislative intern, lobbying and testifying for mental health access bills. She serves on several national and state boards focused on mental health and activism, including the Youth Council on Mental Health. She co-authored the Teen Lifestyle Medicine Handbook that's now being shared nationwide across several hundred schools. She's presented both live and online for many different events, including the 2022 National Alliance on Mental Illness Conference, and has been interviewed for a book, podcast, and local and national news stations on youth and young adult mental health and the power of change. Next to her, we have Jacqueline. Jacqueline Ruiz Rivera is a senior at DSST Montview High School. She values being an active part of her community and taking leadership roles. She volunteers at Children's Hospital Colorado and is an active member of the Colorado Youth Congress. She's passionate about looking into complex systems and collaborating with others alike to dive into a deeper understanding about these systems. In the future, she wishes to continue to play an important part of her community, helping others around her. And next to her, we have Stacy Adimu. Stacy is a Black Togolese woman who is currently serving in her first year at the University of Denver, majoring in biology. She currently serves as a youth advisor for the Youth Council on Mental Health, and she hopes that her passion for mental and public health will lead to her becoming a physician. She enjoys reading and learning new hairstyles to braid on herself. Next to Stacy, we have Fortunate Madike. Fortunate's journey involves more than academics. It's a mixture of community engagement and personal growth. From advocating for education reform and student affairs with the Young Aspiring Americans for Social and Political Activism, or YASPA, to managing her own pastry and hair braiding businesses, she has embraced diverse roles. With a 4.4 GPA, much higher than mine was, and in the top 5% of her class, Fortunate thrives on the challenges of rigorous courses. This has led her to programs such as YASPA that allow her to utilize not only her academic skills, but also her community engagement skills to help both worlds. And then finally, we have Chanel Jones Ahmed. She's pursuing her studies at the University of Colorado, Denver, majoring in business entrepreneurship and architecture. Beyond academics, Chanel enjoys guiding individuals through home transactions as a dedicated realtor. Additionally, Chanel is part of CU Boulder's Voices of Healing research team and serves as a steering committee member for food justice in Northwest Aurora. Outside of those spaces, Chanel finds joy in spaces dedicated to community engagement, particularly those focused on social justice, youth advocacy, and fostering a positive, healthy culture among youth of color. This year, Chanel is enthusiastic about her role as a youth leader for the Youth Council on Mental Health, where she aims to inspire change and challenge the stigma surrounding mental health. That is impressive. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about this topic with you all. And I think to start, we just want to frame that we know that there's lots of positive aspects of social media, and we know that there's lots of potential risks that we just heard about. Could each of you start and just share sort of your why for wanting to be on this panel, and then share one positive aspect of social media and then one negative or risk of social media? And let's just go down the row. We'll start with Caitlin.
Sounds great. Yeah. So my name's Caitlin Tollefson. And I'd say one of the big reasons why I'm on this panel today is social media has affected me time and time again. It's when we were in COVID, I had a screen time of dare I say about 15 hours on social media. Not amazing, not amazing. Sometimes it got up to like the 20-hour limit. And this was essentially where I kind of like reached my point of like, this is not okay. This something needs to change. Something needs to change. But I will say a really big positive with this is that it is such a useful tool for connection. It's the exact way how my entire friend group in high school communicated back and forth. We would never text on iMessage or anything like that. We would only use Instagram to text. So I'd say that connection is incredibly, incredibly important, but also it can be incredibly, incredibly addictive. So yeah.
My name's Jackie and I'm a senior in high school. I think social media overall I think it's really great for networking and being able to put yourself out there. I think, however, also has a big impact on how people, specifically teenagers, on how they view themselves. And I think overall that can really affect their academics and what they think of themselves overall.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Adimu, and I think my why for why I'm even on this panel is because I think as a Black woman, it's very hard to find your community. I grew up in areas where I was always the only Black girl. I didn't really have anyone that looked like me, and being able to go on social media and find people that look like me, people that thought like me, people that could introduce me to authors like Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, introduce me to like the works of Black women. I think that's like why I like find like social media is so useful, but I also do see the risk with social media, especially when it comes to mental health and like people kind of like being lost in social media is a really big risk to me. So I think that one benefit is people finding community, and I think one risk is people thinking that's the only community they have available.
Hi, my name is Fortunate Madike, and the reason why I'm on this panel is very similar to Stacy's. Because I'm a Black woman and I guess it's Colorado, it is somewhat diverse. It's not really easy to find my community where I'm also Nigerian, so where I could be myself, express hair struggles or experiences as a Black woman. So with social media, I'm able to really express myself to the fullest and connect with other people who also live in Colorado. And I would say something positive about social media is that you get to showcase yourself and really express your ideas. And I would say something negative is that it's not always used the way that it's intended to be used and could lead to harmful damages.
Hi, my name is Chanel Jones. My why about being in mental health kind of goes back to how I was raised. So in my family, they really didn't acknowledge mental health. It was kind of like, you're fine, you'll get over it. You know, she's just mad, she's just upset, leave her alone. And it wasn't something that was ever discussed. So like seeing that obviously reflects who you hang out with, how you show up in other spaces, how you talk, how you involve yourself with other people. And I feel like myself, I wanted to overcome that generational, I don't want to say curse, but like I wanted to be aware of mental health and not just push it aside. I feel like a good thing about social media is that you can learn new things, get access to different education, and I feel like you're able to, like what Stacy said, is like find your community. But the bad side about this is that sometimes people open up on social media and they're looking for a validation that they can't get, if that makes sense. It was earlier this January, I actually saw a comment on a reel, and it was like really weird because my algorithm was all about suicide, which was not my thoughts, but I came across this video and this guy commented and he was like, I hate it here, I just want to die. I just can't do this anymore. It's my birthday and my friends didn't say happy birthday to me. I don't want to be here anymore. And it struck me because a lot of the comments were like, real. That's so real. Yeah, I get you for real. That's cool. And I was the only person that commented. And I was like, you're worthy of living. Please don't feel this way. You're worthy of experiencing new life. And that's when a few months later, he liked my comment, but the community was validating him. Like, that's real. And that's kind of the negative side that I could see.
I want to kind of start with thinking back to the video that we watched at the beginning of this session. One of the things that really stood out to me was when one of the youth said that social media steals your joy. And that just really, really stood out. I want to start with you, Chanel, actually. Do you think that social media is contributing to the rise in mental health issues among teens and young adults? Why or why not?
I think it definitely is because, like with my last example, people are very involved with things that they resonate with, and sometimes what they resonate in is kind of like a revalidation. Wait, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
How do you think, or do you think that social media contributes to the sort of mental health problems that youth and young adults are facing today?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if you guys heard of the word delulu. So it's kind of a phrase that a lot of people use, and like they kind of use it a lot for validation. So like, let's say like your boyfriend's cheating on you. They'll be like, yeah, or like you're interested in someone that doesn't like you back. They're like, yeah, I'm a little delulu. I'm gonna stalk him. I'm a delulu. But everyone in the comment section is validating what she's saying. They're like, yeah, that's cool. You could be delulu. Think that he loves you. Like things like that. And that happens with not just that, but with like multiple other things. So people aren't really facing their problems on the front end. They're rather just agreeing with each other and pushing it to the side. So I feel like that can be one effect of social media because, you know, it's teaching you to just reinforce certain beliefs that can be, what's the word, like reevaluated, if that makes sense.
Fortunate, what do you think?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, totally. Do you think that social media is contributing to the rise in sort of youth mental health challenges for youth and young adults?
Although social media has definitely progressed in how people put themselves out there, because I know previously in the years before, there was nothing really about body positivity or being validated in other spaces. People would put on this like fake persona stating that they're perfect. And I feel like with social media, to some extent, it steals your joy because based on your algorithm, it could either show you, like if you're looking for things that you want to be, like let's say a body image that looks nothing like yours, if you keep looking at it and looking at it and looking at it again, it's definitely going to steal your joy because you don't feel like you meet that requirement. But then if you look at things based off like body positivity with other people who agree with you and spaces where you feel connected, I wouldn't say it would steal your joy, but it would make you feel validated and make you feel like seen or heard.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to transition to how this community and your kind of community at large can sort of help support youth on social media. I want to start with Jackie. What advice would you give to youth regarding social media use?
I think definitely don't take it as seriously. I think there's a lot of misinformation that can spread throughout social media, and a lot of it can be true, but most of it can also have these negative impacts on other people. I think also using it in the correct way can also it can further opportunities for you, help you connect with other people. And overall, I think just using it appropriately and not using it in a disruptive way for other people that could harm them.
Yeah. Stacey, what do you wish that parents or teachers or other adults in your life knew about social media and how they can support you on it?
So I think when I interact with all of like these adults in my life, when they hear all of these statistics about social media, they think we need to ban it. Like, that's it, we need to ban it. But let me warn you, the youth will resist and we will find different outlets. So I think that when we kind of do have these conversations, we need to have an effort that's going to be effective and consistent. So I think that when we view social media, we can't just view it as like this thing that's terrible, that's like harming youth. And of course, those things may be true, but we do need to look at the benefits of it as well and understand that social media, it really does depend on how you use it and like what you intend to get from it. So being able to like have those different conversations, interacting with different youth that have different experiences, instead of just taking like that one experience and thinking we need to ban it completely.
Chanel, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you wish parents or teachers or any other adults in your life knew about social media and how they can support you?
Well, I wish that like parents and like people in the school system understood that just taking something away is not going to solve all the problems. I feel like when you just take away like a kid's phone or make them delete an app, you're hurting them in a way because you don't understand their connection to that. I mean, like what Stacey was saying, like someone could just have a lot of friends on that app and they're communicating with them. You're taking away that one way they can communicate. I know a lot with my family. My brother, when he was 8, he got his first Kindle and he was obsessed. My parents would try to take it away from him and he'd like start raging out. He still does it to this day with his PlayStation, and they never take it away from him because he's like so addicted to it. So I feel like parents and like people in the school system and just professionals in general should just understand that there are other ways to remove social media away from the youth without actually just like physically removing it, because like there's so many you can think it could be beneficial, like they're getting a break, they're getting a mental break, they're doing their homework, but on the other side you're not seeing the mental aspect of it and how it could be deteriorating to their mindset and how they see you.
Great. So there's a lot of advocates and policymakers in this room. So I want to shift into thinking about solutions and systems change. And these are really hard things to solve. So I want to think about how policymakers can better support youth mental health. And I would say the caveat to all this is that all the youth here today are representing themselves. And so if they say something about a current policy or a future policy, it doesn't necessarily reflect the position of the organizations that they represent. But just with that caveat, because I don't know what they're going to say. We didn't practice. I love it. So as many of you know, dozens of states, including Colorado, are suing Meta with claims that its apps, including Facebook and Instagram, are contributing to youth mental health crisis by knowingly and deliberately designing features on those platforms that addict youth. I want to start with Caitlin. What do you think about lawsuits like this?
Yeah, so I think this is incredibly interesting. And while there are so many positives to social media, like the connection, the exposure to other cultures, all the different positives that were mentioned previously, it is also, and we've known this from like essentially the beginning, that social media is designed to be addictive. Now, it's not like whenever you're going out and shopping and you see behind the gas station all of the nicotine products and that have the little warning labels on them. They're saying this is an addictive product, and it's well known that nicotine is an addictor. But there's also studies out there that say that even like cheese is an addictor. It'll like target the same receptors that cocaine will even target. And we don't have those warning labels on cheese, which is kind of why it's kind of similar with social media. With social media, it has been designed in a way that will kind of give that little emotional response of, ooh, I like this. Let's keep going. I like this, and kind of keep you into that doom scroll. And having this platform where these different companies can specifically target their content and target our views and the media usage, because media is incredibly powerful, as we all know, and are able to target this media in an incredibly addictive format, is causing a lot of not real, I guess I'd say like chaos in a adolescent's life. But yeah, I'd say that it would be best to try to find a way to figure out how to manage social media in a way where we can maximize the positives and minimize the negatives.
Yeah. Okay, Stacey, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you think about some of these lawsuits that are happening?
So I definitely agree with Caitlin's points. I think that social media, they definitely know how to make money. Personally, I love to shop. I will take every opportunity I can to shop. And I think that my social media now knows that, because every time I open that, there's always a shop feature. There's always an Amazon storefront. There's always a Target wish list that I can go on. And it's very concerning, like the way that they're kind of like tracking us. So I feel like when like we kind of do like consider like these regulations, these lawsuits, we need to have like this ground idea that we need to protect our people no matter what, protecting their information, protecting like their ideas, like protecting their privacy most of all. So I think that like suing Meta for like their things, like they know exactly how to make their things addictive, and it's very concerning to me. So we need to like, as like decision makers all in this room, we need to like take more initiative to like put an end to that.
Great. I love it. Getting some reactions. You all talked about some of the best things about social media and also some of the worst things. And we've seen in a lot of other states that they have tried to implement a lot of solutions to strike that balance that Caitlin mentioned, the maintaining positive interactions on social media and reducing some of the negative. Some of those examples are things like imposing curfews for youth that are using platforms under age 18, or requiring parental permission to access the platform. All these things that they're trying to force social media companies to do to better protect youth. I'll start with Fortunate. What do you think about some of those solutions?
There's a saying that goes, strict parents create sneaky kids. And I believe that this, I'm not a sneaky kid, but I would say that this applies to this situation. That if you like Chanel said, if you take things away from kids, they're gonna find ways around it. And instead of parents being able to help them by confronting the issue, kids are gonna go around not knowingly hurting themselves by opening access to social media. And I feel like social media, because of the algorithm and the way that it's catered to everyone, youth may think that, oh, I'm a free thinker, I'm not really swayed to one side or another, but they can't really be free thinkers if everything that they're presented is catered to one bias. And so the question I would ask would be that, are you really a free thinker if your For You page is deciding for you what to think?
That's super interesting. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna ask the same question to Caitlin. You were the one that mentioned sort of this really important striking of maintaining positive and getting rid of the negative. What do you think of some of those solutions? Are they doing that?
I'm going to echo Fortunate and with the statement that strict parents create sneaky kids. I think that's a great statement. And I also think it applies when we talk even about policies. Strict legislators can possibly make sneaky kids, sneaky adolescents, sneaky young adults that are trying to use social media. So I feel like there's these different laws that are coming, or these different policies that are popping up about setting a curfew, about banning certain apps entirely, about adding age restrictions. I'm just going to look down the line right here and ask, how many of you guys have put an age that's not your own when applying for an account? Yeah, I have too. 5 out of 5. Yeah, there. So it's something, the age barriers are usually something that are honestly very, very, very often neglected by many people, whether it's signing up for a Minecraft account and you don't want to have to go ask your parents who are in the room across from you, 2 yards away, hey, can I download Minecraft? Or if it's something like getting onto a site that's restricted for adults. These age barriers don't typically tend to do much of anything to prevent kids from being on these sites. And I wanted to also say, with curfews and adding parental constrictions, this then, the issue with this is often that it provides a differing level of parental supervision. And this can go in 2 very different ways. You can have parents that might be incredibly strict with the regulations and social media usage, and have it locked down where there's very limited times where kids can use social media. But this then also could possibly target the ability for kids to connect. Like I would be on my phone at 1 a.m. Woken up by a text from one of my friends saying that they were going through a rough breakup and they needed someone to be there to console them. And so I would join on a call with them. They'd be crying. I'd be able to help assist them through the breakup. And being able to have that connection there at these odd times when life just happens is so incredibly important. And having a parental constraint where parents can possibly tighten these restrictions to a point where there's not able to be this communication could make potentially very difficult circumstances. And the reverse is also true if parents allow a great deal of freedom with social media, because I know I was allowed a lot of freedom with my social media usage, and I love my parents. But I was on like TikTok for like 10 hours every day. It was bad. I eventually had to delete it because I was doom scrolling too much. But leaving it up to the parents is honestly probably not the best of ideas, considering that'll put in a lot of other variables with this big decision that is causing so much stress for even for the entire world. And it's something that we need to think about in possibly other ways.
Jackie, would you add anything to that? What do you think about some of these solutions that have been tried in other states?
I think it's also like building off of what Caitlin said, it's also like super easy to be able to get around these restrictions, because I'm 17 now, but I remember like when I was 10, I put that I was born in like 1923 or something. I was just 17. But I think as like a high schooler, also finding solutions to not really find the root to these problems, but trying to outreach teenagers specifically and be able to talk to them about these dangers, about curfews and things. Yes, I think teenagers will like be able to find a way around it. I feel like even if laws were implemented where a curfew was necessary, I don't think teenagers would really take that seriously. But I think trying to talk to these teenagers and tell them about these dangers would be really important.
Okay, now a harder question. I'm going to start with Chanel because I believe in you. What solutions do you wish were being considered instead of some of these other ones?
That's a good question. Wait, can you ask the question again?
Yeah, totally. Are there other solutions that you wish were being considered instead of like a curfew, or is there another way that policymakers can better support you?
I mean, just like creating spaces where youth are able to talk, not have to use social media, but be in spaces where they can be engaged in those things that they use in social media. So like, let's say they're interested in gymnastics. They go to a space where people talk about gymnastics, reiterate those same things that they're looking and engaging with on social media is really important, because yes, you're interacting with your phone the whole time, but you're also trying to interact with other people online. So being able to create that space where it's in person, it's communicative and just like physical is really important, because I know like with the pandemic and everything, social media was a space for people to contact people because we were all on lockdown. But when it got back into being in person, a lot of people developed social anxiety, but there was never spaces created to overcome that social anxiety or be able to learn how to re-communicate effectively or learn how to say responses that were more than one word. So I feel like that can be one solution. Another solution could be just creating like a relationship between one another. I feel like with social media, people are always trying to look for a relationship. Not like there's like a love relationship, but they're looking for some type of, ongoing communication that will benefit each other. So being able to create other ways of access to those things without having to get on your phone, not being able to have like a little thing on your screen saying you're out of time. Putting those restrictions is just taking back and creating more barriers for people to connect with others. So being able to create spaces and different types of communication styles where people are allowed to communicate with each other differently.
Caitlin, what do you think? Are there solutions you wish were being considered?
Oh my gosh, yes. So this is a point that I know everyone in YCMH is like, oh, Caitlin's going to go on that rant again. I've been going on it for several meetings now. But the one idea that came up when we were discussing, since I'm on a team that really talks about social media usage in adolescents and young adults, and we're kind of trying to go over ideas to figure out what can be done to address this. And one of my favorite ideas that I think has come up in this is the idea of having mindful breaks put into social media. This was suggested by one of the members of our team, and the moment that she said it, I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So having these mindful breaks, almost like non-skippable ads, where it would be telling you to do this like breathing exercise, take a few deep breaths in, take a few deep breaths out, use evidence-backed knowledge and evidence-backed research on different mechanisms, different ways to get people off of social media, get people off of the kind of like loop that you get into when you're on social media and doom scrolling, and to possibly reorient that mental space, reorient that position that you're in, and move to a more positive mental space, whether that's identify like something in the room that's blue, look for something that's circle shaped, look for something that's fluffy. Or if that's take 5 deep breaths, and then you can get back to scrolling if you choose to get back to scrolling. But adding this kind of like buffer in there is something that I believe it's been something that has helped me get off of social media, and it's been like essentially the only thing that's helped me get off of social media is when a random video will come by someone advocating for social media awareness, who says, okay, look for 5 things that you can feel that are tactilely different. And I'll be like, okay, I'm now like feeling different things in my world. And it really was only those type of things that get me actually like up and interacting that have been able to get me off of my phone. And I believe that this would be an incredibly useful way to try to figure out a way to better allow still for communication, but also have a way to break up the addictive cycle that social media companies are placing into it. It would be a disruptor, like an added disruptor to encourage, not to encourage, but kind of to force these companies to break up that addictive cycle and to allow adolescents, allow young adults, allow anyone who's using social media to be able to have a more positive experience.
Awesome. Okay, the time went by fast. To close this out, we're going to ask one final question that you'll all get to answer. And we'll start with Chanel and then we'll bring it back. So there's a lot of people in this room who might not have young people in their lives, and might not be young people, and might not have grown up with social media the way that all of you did. What's one thing you want to make sure that they hear from you today that they should leave this room with?
I would say if you see your friend on social media making a comment that could be concerning or questionable, just text them and follow up on that comment, only because social media is an outlet for people to share their voices. And even though you might not see that comment as soon as possible, I think it's really important that you show up for your friends and your family and your kids and just check up on them, because those check-ins mean a lot. And just being able to show that you care and just check in often is really important, because, well, can I share an example? Okay, I saw my friend this weekend, like he posted like a comment and he was like, yeah, I be taking antidepressants. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know this about you. We talk like all the time. So just like me reaching out and checking up on him was really important, because like those little things that you don't know about people and just checking in with them can go a really long way.
Could you repeat the question?
What's one thing you want to make sure that the people in this room take away from today?
One thing I want to make sure that the people in this room take away from today would be that rather as adults trying to advocate for youth, tell the youth to advocate for themselves, because as youth, we want to see the changes that we want to see. We don't want to see policies made by adults to affect children. As youth, we want to be able to implement our own policies. Also, I would say both youth and adults and everyone, they should focus on the positive aspects of social media. Remind yourself that, oh, this could also be a positive space. And if you feel overwhelmed by social media and start feeling negative emotions, you could also remember that I feel like it's easier said than done, but with just the deletion of an app, the unadding of a friend, the blocking of someone, yes, they might be instantly gone, but I guess after effects might be there, but that's an option.
I think that everyone in this room can initiate change. I feel like everyone, even if you're legislators, researchers, aides, social advocates, all of you, it's very important that this is not your only engagement with youth. We do not represent youth as a whole. If you really want to initiate change, you need to be directing the audience that's going to be most affected by it. And you need to be having those conversations with youth. You need to be joining those youth activist organizations. You need to be giving them space to be youth, and you need to listen to them instead of automatically taking action. So I think that's my biggest word of advice for all of you in this room.
Yeah, I think also making the space for them to also advocate for themselves is really important. I think being able to give them the space and the opportunity to advocate for themselves just can overall make a huge difference when making these policies and researching.
I'm going to absolutely echo Stacy with saying that we need to have youth in these spaces, that decisions are being made about youth for youth. These are things that are going to affect them. And even when we were listening to some of the debate over all the TikTok stuff, hearing how youth were making comments on these debates, and we're like, okay, we have all this knowledge about what TikTok is, about what all of these things are, that are really needed in this conversation, that aren't being added to this conversation. So I'm absolutely going to echo Stacey with saying that youth need to be in this conversation. And then the last thing that I'm going to say is that connection is necessary. It has been shown over and over and over again. The Surgeon General has released a book about how important the need is for connection. So social media is going to be here to stay with just that need for connection. But we also need to address it in a way where we can figure out how to put a little blocker in this addictive cycle that's being made, that's affecting so many youth and young adults.
Great. Well, I cannot thank each of you enough for being here today. The intention for the audience today was to start a conversation about how social media impacts youth mental health, but we don't want the conversation to end here. As they said much more eloquently than I, youth are here and they want to be a part of the solutions. And there's a lot of youth-led organizations that are available to have intentional conversations with around some of these really complex problems. So please engage these groups directly. You can engage other amazing groups of youth that are around the state. And when you're developing these solutions, we want this to be the beginning of that conversation. And I am so thankful that I got to be a part of it.
Oh, you can go either way. Yeah. All right. I sometimes hate it when people do this, but I really think if we could give one more round of applause to Janelle, Stacy, Jackie, Caitlin, and Fortunate, and Allie. I feel like that was really insightful for me. I learned a ton, including what Delulu is. No, I actually didn't learn what Delulu. I don't really get it. I have to look it up so I can misuse it awkwardly in my daily lived life. Yeah, as everyone said, we're hoping that this is the beginning or the middle of a conversation and not the end of it. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here today as well. We are now going to head into a break. There are some snacks and beverages provided outside. And I would like to remind everybody that coming back here at 2:30, we are going to be beginning our Hot Issues legislative session, which is always a very, very exciting hot ticket at Hot Issues. So thank you all so very much and enjoy.
All right, you heard Emily. We are ending this session. We will have, if you want, we're starting an intersession in a few minutes. You can find that out in the lobby. Otherwise, we'll see you back here at 2:30 for our legislative preview, and I will be on stage for that. So see you then.